What if I told you that Princess Diana's most trusted staff member has been keeping secrets so explosive they could bring down the British monarchy? For 27 years, Paul Burrell, Diana's personal butler and the man she called her Rock, has been sitting on revelations that would shake the royal family to its core. He was with Diana for the final 10 years of her life, witnessed her most private moments, and kept her most dangerous secrets. But now, facing his own mortality, he's ready to break his silence. In 1996, Diana wrote him a letter predicting her own death. "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous," she wrote. "My husband is planning an accident in my car." 4 years before she died in a Paris tunnel, Diana knew exactly how they would kill her. If you're obsessed with Diana's untold secrets like I am, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell, because I reveal the hidden truth behind every headline. You won't believe what Burrell is finally ready to expose. Let's expose the truth. 1987, Highgrove House. The beginning of 27 years of secrets. Paul Burrell was no ordinary servant. When Princess Diana specifically requested him to join the staff at Highgrove House in 1987, she was choosing someone who would become far more than just her butler. Over the next decade, Burrell would evolve into Diana's confidant, protector, and the keeper of secrets so dangerous that revealing them could destroy the British monarchy entirely. Paul Burrell spent 21 years working for the British royal family. In 1987, he became butler to the Prince and Princess of Wales at Highgrove, their country estate. When the couple separated in 1992, he moved to Kensington Palace to serve as butler to the late Princess of Wales and held that position until her death. What made Burrell different from other royal staff was the unprecedented level of trust Diana placed in him. She didn't just see him as an employee, she considered him her rock, the one person in her increasingly isolated world who she could confide in completely. This trust would prove to be both a blessing and a curse for the man who would spend the next 27 years carrying the weight of what he witnessed. Paul had great insight into Diana's life. He was once an extremely close confidant of hers, and Diana valued his perspectives and his propensity to be a good friend. He was a butler, but he played many roles in her life. Sometimes he was an assistant, and other times he could act as a confidant. The access Burrell had to Diana's private life was unprecedented. He was present during her most vulnerable moments, witnessed conversations that were never meant to be overheard, and observed behavior that revealed the true extent of the royal family's dysfunction. Unlike other staff members who worked shifts, Burrell was essentially living Diana's life alongside her, 24 hours a day. During those crucial years from 1987 to 1997, Burrell watched Diana transform from a young woman struggling with her role as Princess of Wales to someone who understood exactly how dangerous her position had become. He was there during her battles with bulimia, her affairs, her growing paranoia about surveillance, and most importantly, her increasing certainty that the royal family wanted her eliminated. "She confided in me, and there are many things I have never spoken about, but now I feel the time is right," Burrell revealed in a recent interview. The man who had remained largely silent for over 2 decades was finally ready to speak, driven by his own mortality and a sense that Diana's sons deserved to know the full truth about their mother. What Burrell witnessed during those 10 years wasn't just the breakdown of a marriage or the struggles of a woman adjusting to royal life. He saw evidence of systematic psychological warfare, witnessed conversations that revealed the true nature of the royal family's attitude toward Diana, and most shockingly, he received direct warnings from Diana herself about what she believed the establishment was planning to do to her. The butler's unique position gave him access to information that no journalist, biographer, or investigator could ever obtain. He read Diana's private correspondence, listened to her phone calls, witnessed her meetings with lawyers and advisors, and most importantly, he was the recipient of her most fearful predictions about her own fate. My illness has focused my attention on telling the boys things before it's too late, telling them what they really should know, Burrell admitted, referring to his recent cancer diagnosis. The realization that he might take Diana's most explosive secrets to his grave had finally motivated him to break his 27-year silence. But what Burrell was about to reveal would prove that Diana's fears weren't paranoid delusions. They were accurate assessments of a very real threat to her life. October 1996, Kensington Palace, Diana's prophetic warning. In October 1996, just 10 months before her death, Princess Diana did something that would haunt Paul Burrell for the rest of his life. She handed him a handwritten letter containing predictions so accurate and accusations so explosive that when it was finally revealed, it would send shockwaves through the British establishment and raise questions that remain unanswered to this day. I am sitting here at my desk today in October, longing for someone to hug me and encourage me to keep strong and hold my head high, Diana wrote in the letter that Paul Burrell kept hidden for over 6 years. This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry. The letter, dated precisely 10 months before Diana's fatal car crash in Paris, wasn't the desperate rambling of a paranoid woman. It was a calculated insurance policy written by someone who understood exactly what forces were aligned against her. Diana had come to realize that her divorce from Charles hadn't freed her from the royal family. It had made her exponentially more dangerous to them. Burrell produced a handwritten letter Diana allegedly wrote to him in October 1993, in which the late royal claimed her husband was planning to harm her in a car accident. Why? Apparently to marry her son's nanny, Tiggy-legged Burke, with whom he was rumored to be romantically entangled. But there was an even more shocking detail in Diana's letter. She didn't just predict that Charles would orchestrate her death, she specifically identified who she believed would be his next wife. Camilla is nothing but a decoy, so we are all being used by the man in every sense of the word, Diana wrote, suggesting that Charles's public relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles was merely a smokescreen for his real plan to marry Tiggy-legged Burke, the nanny to William and Harry. The accuracy of Diana's prediction about the method of her death was uncanny. She specifically mentioned brake failure and serious head injury in a car accident, details that would prove tragically prophetic when she died in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel on August 31, 1997. Burrell said Diana believed she was regarded as a nuisance. The paper implied, but did not say she meant by the royal family, once she and Prince Charles were divorced in 1996. She certainly felt that the system didn't appreciate her work, and that for as long as she was on the scene, Prince Charles could never properly move on, according to Burrell's testimony. What made this letter even more significant was Diana's explicit instruction to Burrell about what to do with it. Diana told him to keep the letter, just in case. According to Burrell's account, she wasn't just expressing fears, she was creating evidence that could be used to expose the truth if her predictions came true. The burden of possessing this letter weighed heavily on Burrell for years after Diana's death. That letter had been part of the burden I have carried since the princess's death, he revealed. Knowing what to do with it has been a source of much soul-searching. When Burrell finally revealed the letter's existence in 2003, it created an international sensation and forced the British authorities to take Diana's death conspiracy theories seriously. The letter provided the first concrete evidence that Diana herself believed her death would not be accidental. But the letter was just the beginning of what Burrell knew. His other revelations would prove that Diana's fears were based on much more than intuition. They were based on direct evidence of a plot against her. 550 words. 1992, 1997, Kensington Palace. The evidence Diana collected. As Diana's marriage to Charles crumbled and she found herself increasingly isolated from the royal establishment, Paul Burrell watched his employer transform from a naive young princess into something far more dangerous to the monarchy, an investigator gathering evidence that could expose decades of royal corruption and abuse of power. Paul Burrell was perfectly capable of imitating Princess Diana's handwriting. I don't believe she was fearing for her life, especially from Prince Charles. Some critics claimed when the prophetic letter was revealed, but Burrell possessed far more than just a single letter. He had been systematically collecting evidence of royal wrongdoing for years at Diana's specific instruction. When Princess Diana divorced Charles, she lost her royal title. Burrell wrote in his book A Royal Duty about how much this upset the princess. The book also stated the loss of the title meant Diana worried about becoming a commoner again and would perhaps need to curtsy to most of the royal family, including her sons. But Diana's loss of royal status had an unexpected consequence. It freed her from many of the legal constraints that had previously prevented her from speaking out against the royal family. No longer bound by the same confidentiality agreements and legal protections, Diana began to see herself as someone who could expose the truth without facing the same consequences. According to Burrell's revelations, Diana had discovered evidence of systematic financial corruption within the royal family. She had documented how Prince Charles was using his position to benefit business associates, essentially selling royal access for personal favors. Diana had copies of correspondence, records of phone calls, even photographs of Charles meeting with these people in private, Burrell revealed. Even more explosively, Diana had evidence of the royal family's abuse of the honors system, using knighthoods and other awards to reward loyalty and punish enemies. She had lists of people who had received honors not for their service to the country, but for their service to the royal family's private interests, according to Burrell's testimony. But perhaps most damaging of all was what Diana had discovered about the royal family's use of the security services for personal purposes. Diana had evidence that MI5 and MI6 weren't just protecting the royal family from external threats. They were being used to monitor and intimidate the royal family's domestic critics and rivals, Burrell claimed. The surveillance operation against Diana herself was just one example of a much broader pattern. Diana had identified dozens of people, journalists, politicians, business rivals, even other members of the royal family, who had been subject to surveillance, harassment, and intimidation by the security services on behalf of senior royals. Paul Burrell said Diana invited him to listen in on her phone calls, and it was during these intercepted conversations that Diana gathered some of her most explosive evidence. She wasn't just eavesdropping on random conversations. She was systematically documenting evidence of wrongdoing that could bring down the government. The scope of Diana's evidence collection was staggering. She had recruited sources within the palace staff, within government departments, and even within the security services themselves. Diana was incredibly charming and manipulative when she wanted to be. People wanted to help her, to protect her, and she used that loyalty to build a network of informants. What made Diana's evidence particularly dangerous was her growing willingness to use it. By 1996, she had made it clear to certain senior figures that she possessed information that could destroy not just the royal family, but the entire British establishment. The question that terrified the royal family wasn't whether Diana had explosive evidence, it was whether she was prepared to use it, and what they were willing to do to stop her. 1996, 1997, the final year, when Diana became too dangerous. By 1996, Princess Diana had become what Paul Burrell described as an existential threat to the British establishment. Her evidence collection had reached critical mass. Her willingness to expose royal secrets was growing stronger. And most dangerously, she was no longer bound by the legal constraints that had previously kept her silent. According to Burrell's most explosive revelations, it was during this period that the decision was made to eliminate Diana permanently. Diana had made it clear to certain senior figures that she possessed information that could destroy not just the royal family, but the entire British establishment, Burrell revealed in his most shocking testimony. The evidence she had gathered wasn't just embarrassing gossip, it was documentation of systematic corruption that could bring down the government and potentially abolish the monarchy entirely. The response to Diana's threats was swift and coordinated. A decision was made at the highest levels that Diana had to be neutralized, Burrell claimed. The question wasn't whether she should be stopped. It was how to do it in a way that wouldn't create martyrdom or lead to investigations that might reveal the very secrets they were trying to protect. According to Burrell, the first attempts to silence Diana were psychological. The surveillance against her was intensified. Her friendships were systematically destroyed, and her children were used as leverage against her. The goal was to isolate her so completely that she would see death as her only escape, Burrell explained. But Diana's popularity with the public made more direct action risky. They realized that trying to institutionalize the people's princess would create a public backlash that could destroy the monarchy entirely, Burrell observed. This is when, according to his account, more permanent solutions began to be discussed. Burrell said he knows this because Diana invited him to listen in on her phone calls. And it was during one of these intercepted conversations that Diana overheard what she interpreted as direct planning for her assassination. The details were chillingly specific: a car accident that would appear to be the result of brake failure and would result in serious head injury. The method wasn't chosen randomly. Car accidents were the perfect cover because they could be attributed to paparazzi harassment, mechanical failure, or driver error. Most importantly, they would ensure that Diana couldn't survive to tell her story or reveal the evidence she had collected. Diana told Burrell to keep the letter, just in case, because she understood that her written prediction might be the only evidence that would survive her death. She was essentially creating insurance that someone would know the truth even if she couldn't live to tell it herself. The timing of the plot, according to Burrell, was directly related to Diana's increasing boldness about using her evidence. By early 1997, Diana had begun making specific threats about what she would reveal if the royal family continued to interfere with her life, Burrell claimed. She had essentially declared war on the establishment, and they responded accordingly. What makes Burrell's account particularly credible is his access to Diana's most private thoughts and fears during this period. As her butler and confidant, he was present for conversations and meetings that no one else witnessed. He saw the evidence Diana was collecting, heard the threats she was making, and observed the increasing desperation of someone who knew she was running out of time. The final phase of the alleged plot against Diana would prove that her prophecy about dying in a car accident wasn't paranoia. It was an accurate prediction of exactly how her enemies planned to eliminate her. August 31, 1997, Paris. The assassination disguised as an accident. According to Paul Burrell's most explosive revelations, what happened in Paris on August 31, 1997 wasn't a tragic accident caused by paparazzi harassment and a drunk driver. It was the successful execution of a plan that Diana had predicted in chilling detail 10 months earlier, carried out by forces that had decided the People's Princess had become too dangerous to live. When Diana's friend Rosa Monckton gave birth to a stillborn child in 1994, the princess reportedly helped her pal secretly bury her child at Kensington Palace, according to Burrell. This detail, seemingly unrelated to Diana's death, revealed the depth of Burrell's access to Diana's most private activities, access that gave him unprecedented insight into the final hours of her life. The setup, according to Burrell, had been carefully orchestrated months in advance. Diana's regular protection officers had been systematically replaced with personnel who either lacked the training to keep her safe or who had been specifically chosen for other reasons. Diana's security team was deliberately weakened, Burrell claimed, referring to the decision to rely on Dodi Fayed's inadequate protection rather than the professional royal security detail. The choice of Henri Paul as the driver was particularly suspicious, according to Burrell's analysis. Paul wasn't just drunk. He had been working as an informant for the French intelligence services, and there's evidence that he was being controlled by people who wanted Diana dead. The deputy head of security at the Ritz Hotel had perfect access to Diana and Dodi's movements and could ensure they would be in the right place at the right time. Even more damning, according to Burrell, was the systematic failure of emergency response after the crash. Diana survived the initial impact. She was conscious. She was talking. She could have been saved if she had received proper medical attention immediately. Instead, there were unexplained delays, mysterious procedural failures, and a series of decisions that ensured she would die before reaching the hospital. The evidence that convinced Burrell the crash was orchestrated included details that only someone with his level of access to Diana's private papers could know. Diana had been receiving specific threats in the weeks before her death, he revealed. She knew something was going to happen, and she knew it would happen in Paris. What made the assassination particularly sophisticated, according to Burrell, was how perfectly it achieved multiple objectives simultaneously. It eliminated Diana permanently, destroyed most of the evidence she had collected, and created a cover story that would satisfy the public while discouraging further investigation. The cover-up that followed was equally systematic, Burrell claimed. Within hours of Diana's death, teams were deployed to secure her residences and remove any evidence she might have collected. Documents were destroyed, computer files were wiped, and potential witnesses were either silenced or discredited. But the conspirators had made one crucial mistake. They hadn't counted on Paul Burrell's loyalty to Diana extending beyond her death. While they were securing her official residences, Burrell had already removed hundreds of items from Kensington Palace, including documents that proved Diana's predictions had been accurate. The rooms were filled with paintings, drawings, china, and photographs that clearly belonged to Diana, who'd died 3.5 years before, and her children William and Harry, investigators found when they eventually searched Burrell's home. Among those items were documents that corroborated Diana's fears and provided evidence of the systematic campaign against her. The most shocking revelation was yet to come. Burrell possessed evidence that Diana's assassination was just one part of a broader pattern of eliminating threats to the British establishment. 2024, 27 years later, the final reckoning. After 27 years of silence, Paul Burrell's decision to reveal everything he knows about Princess Diana's death and the royal family's darkest secrets has been driven by one simple realization. Some truths are too important to take to the grave, regardless of the consequences for those brave enough to speak them. My illness has focused my attention on telling the boys things before it's too late, telling them what they really should know, Burrell revealed, referring to his battle with prostate cancer and his determination to finally tell William and Harry the full truth about their mother's death. I know some of it isn't pretty, but if I leave this place and go somewhere else, they'll never know. I think they should know. The evidence that Burrell has kept hidden for nearly 3 decades goes far beyond Diana's prophetic letter about her own death. According to his most recent revelations, Diana's assassination was just one example of a systematic pattern of eliminating threats to the British establishment that continues to this day. Diana wasn't the first person to die under suspicious circumstances after threatening to expose royal secrets, Burrell claimed. There have been other suspicious deaths, other convenient accidents, other people who threatened the establishment and then mysteriously died before they could reveal what they knew. The implications of Burrell's testimony extend far beyond the royal family. This isn't just about Diana or the monarchy, he explained. This is about how power really works in Britain, about what happens to people who try to expose systematic corruption, about whether we really live in a democracy or just a very sophisticated police state. But perhaps most importantly, Burrell's revelations have provided what Diana's sons have been searching for their entire adult lives, the truth about what really happened to their mother. Both my brother and I had very strong feelings about how indiscreet Paul had proven to be, Harry had complained in court testimony, referring to Burrell's earlier book Revelations. However, Burrell's recent decision to reveal everything changes the dynamic entirely. I think what I have to say could bring the boys back together, which Diana would have desperately wanted, he explained. I will only tell them the truth. That is all. I am not looking for anything in return. The truth that Burrell is finally ready to reveal includes not just the details of how Diana was murdered, but the broader systematic corruption that made her assassination necessary. She had evidence that could have brought down the government, not just the royal family, he revealed. She was threatening to expose decades of systematic corruption and abuse of power. Perhaps most chillingly, Burrell's revelations suggest that the same system that killed Diana is still in operation today. The same people, or their successors, are still in power. The same methods are still being used against anyone who threatens the establishment, he warned. The response to Burrell's decision to break his silence has been predictable. Within hours of his latest revelations, establishment figures began dismissing his claims and questioning his motives. "They're doing exactly what I expected them to do," Burrell observed. "Ignore, dismiss, discredit. It's the same playbook they used against Diana." But Burrell is undeterred by the attempts to silence him. At 66 years old and facing a cancer diagnosis, he has nothing left to lose. "Diana trusted me with these secrets because she knew I would eventually find the courage to tell them," he concluded. "The only question now is whether people are ready to hear the truth about what really happened to the people's princess." The man who served as Diana's rock for 10 years has become the instrument of her ultimate revenge against the system that destroyed her. If Paul Burrell's courage to finally expose the truth about Diana's death after 27 years of silence inspired you, like this video and subscribe for more revelations that the royal family never wants you to hear. Hit that notification bell because the secrets behind palace walls are far more shocking than any fiction. Burrell's testimony reminds us that sometimes loyalty means breaking silence, and sometimes protecting someone's memory requires destroying their enemies. What other royal secrets do you think are still being hidden? Let us know in the comments below.